Hello, Strikers! I just wanted to do a more in-depth video. We had a lot of questions and some things from the unboxing. And I want to give you guys a chance to see the size and scope of the game. Not only that, show you some of the components up close, some of the art more up close, so you can get an idea of what that is. And also, like I said, the size of the game. There is a lot of game here, and I want to convey that to you. Also, too, we'll talk about some of the other things in there that made this campaign more unique, like backers turning pictures in and doing backer art and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of neat things in here I want to get into. So first of all, we just want to touch on the box. I know I showed this in the unboxing, but it's a nice glossy box. It feels good, and here at Talon Strikes, we try to utilize the money that you provide us in the best way possible. So to get you the best product is really the goal. And so we upgraded the box. It's a little bit thicker than your standard box, so it's going to stand up a little bit better, and you're going to get, in my opinion, a lot more miles out of it that way. So just to kind of touch on that. And it did turn out real nice, you know, the colors and the art on the front and all that. So that's a bit about the box. But as you can see, man, it's a good sized box. There's a lot of stuff in here. So that's the box. We'll talk a little bit more just about the insert. We did talk about that a little bit in the unboxing, but I just kind of want to go a little further in. There's the 3 wells here. This well will cover all the card decks and everything, the crate and all that. You can fit everything in. It's a little bit of a puzzle when you have the crate put together and all that, but everything does fit. And then you have the well here, and that's going to have the Euro cards, the magazine rack cards for the base game, and then Top Shelf fits on top of that really neatly. And then you have the larger well, which is going to keep all your cardboard tokens and all those things. It's good. It's not flimsy. It fits in super nice, so it just doesn't fall out. And we're very pleased to be able to provide you with that plastic insert. And then we've showcased some of our other art on the box. Winterborn is our next Kickstarter. I'll just touch on that quickly. Back us in February. That's our next game. It's a Euro. It's super awesome. We'll talk more about that in coming weeks. But then we got other art, House of Borgia and King's Champion and Kingpin. So some of the other games that we've made are on there. And then when you open the box, of course, rules are on top and some different things. So just talk about the rules very briefly. So yes, the rules are 24 pages long, but that includes everything. So Eric and I had a lot of discussion about how we want to do that. So what's the best way, and what's for people and for the publisher if we have expansions? So we just put the expansions right in our big rule book. So all the expansion rules are in here. So even if you didn't back or pick up the expansions, or you were waiting until later to see how they played or whatever, the rules are in here so you can read about what those do. And I've been saying this the whole time, but each expansion plays differently. You're going to get a different experience. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into this video, but I just want you to understand. So each expansion takes about 2 pages or 3 pages in here, and you have British Invasion, the 80s, and the Masters of Metal, and the Publisher, okay, which are all expansion type things to the base game. Right, and when I originally saw the base game, it was a 2 to 4 player game about collecting records. And then we really kind of took that, and Eric worked overtime. If he's watching this, I'm sure he's chuckling right now. But he worked very hard to bring each version of the game with a different feeling. And so that's all conveyed here in the rule book. I'll link this so you guys can go take a look at it. But it's a great rule book. We tried to put as many pictures and things in there visually for you to make it easy to understand. as a publisher, I think I've gotten better at doing rule books. So that's one thing that can be really hard if you look at a lot of games. Rules can be tough to digest. So I tried to make this as simple as possible, such as taking the end game cards and showing them visually, and then what they do. So you're not trying to guess just off what's on the card. So that's great. We were able to, all the play testers are listed and things like that. So thank you to everybody that contributed to the rules as we went through the Kickstarter. The backers have been fantastic for this project, not only providing art for our albums, which we'll get into, which was so super cool to do, but also chiming in on the rule book. I had a couple of different backers who offered to look through it and help. And that's out of your time. That's just because you care. And that means everything to me and to Eric. So thank you so much. But that's the rules. They really came out good, and it's a good quality paper. So thank you so much. After you pull the rule book up, you're going to see the punch boards are next. There's 6 of them. They're labeled. Like I said earlier, we had to redo the crate. So like here's the punch board for the crate here. And the first version did not work. I do have it here, but it's pretty ugly. I won't go into it, but it did not meet my expectations. And I would not meet your expectations either. So we redesigned that. I did that on Tuesday. I sent it back to the manufacturer. They've gotten that. They've approved it. They're printing it. They're going to punch it. They're going to put it together. I should get that update today. But based on those things, production will start on Monday. So that's very exciting. And they should be able to get that all done, because that was one of the big questions. Are you going to get in before the new year? Yes. If everything goes as planned where we sit right now, that will happen. So there are 6 punch boards. They're labeled, and then on the crate punch board, we've inserted directions here as far as how to put the crate together. It's pretty straightforward, but there'll be that there, and then you just put a little bit of super glue on the corners of it, and it should be just fine. So that's the next thing. So then after that, you're going to get into the player boards. And like I said on the unboxing, these are a good card stock. One of the things that was asked, and the production copy did not have linen finish, but everything in the game will have linen finish. So rest assured, I didn't do a stretch goal for that either. But the game was originally designed 2 to 4, but we talked about doing 1 to 5, and what would that look like, and how would we do that? So, through the course of development, that was something that came out, and we did. It wasn't tacked on later just because we wanted to stretch goal it or make it available for that. Those are things we talked about early on after I signed the game. So you're going to get 5 of these, and they have the Disco Meeple on them, because that was a stretch goal, and I'll show those. They're really cool. But just so you understand, you have the 5 player boards. They show per player, and then on the side we do this. Let's see. Can you do let's bring up the product cam. I'll see if I can show this a little better for you guys. Woo. Getting used to this. All right. So here's the player board here, and this is the base game side. So when you look at your player board, it's going to have your color for who you are, and then it has the different actions that are across the board. So you don't have to stand up and look. It's easily referenceable right here. And that was a backer suggestion, so thank you so much for doing that. I probably would not have looked into doing that had somebody not mentioned it. So it's hard to think of everything when you're making a game this big, and I didn't know if that would work. So because it's pretty small, but it looks nice. So I was able to get that and make it look good. So you can see we have the record bin, the mag rack, the front counter, and the sale bin, and that's the base locations in the base game. And then the distribution of what the cards are, just so you know how many 1950s mint and limited and mint limited and those kinds of things are in the decks. So you can be aware of that as you're building out. And then your active collection side and your layaway and your retired collections. And then on the back side is the publisher expansion. Probably need to move this up just a little bit. So the publisher expansion was something that I really wanted to do because it makes the game a lot more crunchy. So if you just kind of like that medium weight and entry level, then you do the base game with the collections. If you kind of want to ramp it up a little bit, then you play the publisher expansion, and that tracks the different things. So on the player cards, on the album cards, let me scoot that out and play that down. So, well, that kind of washes out with the white, doesn't it? Let me see if I can get something that might not look. Let's see if this helps. So that's a little better. Okay, so what you're going to see there, maybe if I put it at an angle, does that help?
Yeah.
That's a little better. Okay, so if you see down here in the bottom, it shows what the publisher is. And then if it's early or late decade, and that's here. We've also referenced those here for you, so when you make your collection, you actually take the albums and you lay them like this, but you can still see all the information that you need to see here. So when you collect cards, you're going to track the publisher and then early and late decades off the albums. So these are the three different publishers. You have Monster Records, Retro Records, and Electric Records. And then you have early decade, late decade. So you're just going to have a cube, and it just moves right along. So in the publisher expansion, you're going to get the cubes, and it has the player board here. So as you collect those, you just mark them off. When you reach 7, you get to take the player power. It's your choice. So you get 1 frequent shopper power and 1 extreme shopper power, plus you gain end game points for maxing out at the end there. But that's what the publisher expansion does. And in the publisher expansion, you have cubes for each color, and there's 1 cube for each track. And that's what the publisher expansion adds. As you collect cards, you mark them off. So those are the player cards. Let's see. Next, we'll talk about the clearance bin and the top shelf. So one of the Kickstarter exclusives was the top shelf. So I'll show that just right here. So the top shelf is going to come in its own tuck box. And it's a Kickstarter exclusive. So that won't go out in retail. And we do have extras that we may give out as promos at like a con or something like that. But you won't be able to purchase it at retail. So the top shelf has some neat stuff in it. But it also has some cardboard that comes with it. And just, I'll try and throw this in here. So this is the top shelf. It's where you're going to put the cards, and this is one side. The other side is the clearance bin, which goes next to the board. And this holds, I'll just kind of scroll it across, it holds 4 albums, okay? And these were added in after. So the clearance board allows you to take what's in the sale bin and push it to the clearance board for a last chance purchase of minus the 1 attribute. So that's one of those things that we wanted to be able to do as well. So it kind of adds. So when you play the game, you don't play the clearance bin and the top shelf at the same time because they're on the same board, either side. And this was just a punch out, so it goes back in your board and it just easily fits together like that. And then you put the cards on top of it. and how that works. So that's the clearance bin and the top shelf. And we'll kind of go through the top shelf here. If you want to go back to the product cam. Sure. So, as I said, everything has its own deck box, which is really cool. So, in the top shelf, we also had Swing, which was a new genre for the base game. So, you get the magazine rack cards that come with that. Let me see if I can get that a little better so there's not so much light reflecting on it. There you go. So that's the magazine rack cards for the Swing. They have the same back as the base game. So we did all the backs to look like magazines because you go to the magazine rack to get them. So thematically. So you have those, and then you have the Swing albums as well. That you would change out. So if you wanted to play Swing in the base game, let's say you're not as big of a fan of, let's say, jazz or country. So you could trade that out. So you could get rid of the country genre and you could put in Swing in the base game. So it just gives you another option if you want to do that. And then the top shelf offers powers. So it's a very cool thing. And these are powers that you pick up on the top shelf. And then on the back of all the album cards is the album art, right? So the one side shows you the album art, top shelf, and then it has the player power or the power that you gain by obtaining this card. And you use it one time. So when you retire 2 collections, and that's what this represents, retire 2 collections, and then you can take a top shelf album and you'll draft from the top shelf row, and there will be 4 showing that you can pick from. So these are all like odes to different things. So like Eric has one for him, and then we did a Man versus Meeple top shelf album. That was a spoof on an 80s. They're great about it. They've seen it. They thought it was wonderful. So the Playtesters, we did an ode to them. That's the name of the group, and then the album is Aurora. There's another gentleman, Gary Young. He owned a record store back in the day. He's good friends with Eric, and man, he offered an awful lot of information and how things work and how vinyl is. When he ran a record store, vinyl was at its height. So we utilized his brain extensively throughout the design of the game. So that's for him. And then someone who's very special to me and is Michael Coe and the gang over at Gamelin. So I wanted to showcase them in a top shelf album. And then Jeremy at Jambalaya. So we did a spoof on a Stevie Wonder album. If you're a Stevie Wonder fan, you will notice that. So this is for him and all the work that he did for us. Wonderful guy, does a lot of reviews, and really liked the game when he played it. So, and talking with him, I wanted to showcase that. And then High Culture, she's awesome. She's done a lot for me as well. There it is, sorry. But she's fabulous. And then Tantrum House. And the Delps over at Tantrum House have been fantastic. Tantrum House supports Talent Strikes, so I wanted to do something for them as well. So those are the top shelf albums. They each have a power that you can take and then use at your discretion whenever. So that is the top shelf. So in the base game, we have the different genres, and we have all the art that goes through that. I won't go through all the cards. That would take way too long. But needless to say, in the base game, there is art that was backer art, submitted art. So rest assured that's in every version of the game as you go through it. It's very cool that way, and something that separates this game from other games. It has backer art in it, so that's very cool. So as you dig down through the box, then you're going to also, the board is right there. So we'll kind of talk about the board a little bit real quickly. One of the things that we represented was the board is two-sided. So a lot of games you get don't have that, but we wanted to be able to provide that for our backers. And we wanted the game to play well at lower counts. In some games, they say, well, what's the sweet spot of this game? Well, it plays best at 4 or it plays best at 3 or whatever. I don't think this game has any of that. I think this game plays good at all levels, and there's a reason why. We were able to adjust the mechanics for that, and then we could represent that in our game in the board, which limits the locations, which then makes the game play tighter at lower levels. So you're really not a worker placement game where, oh, well, if we play with 2, it just really doesn't play the same as when you play 4. No, this game plays tight at all player counts because we limit the locations and how those work. So we're going to show the boards here. So this is the base game board on the 1 to 3 player side, and if you can see the inlay there, there's on the bottom right hand corner it shows 1 to 3. We also have a colored meeple there, orange for 1 to 3, and it will be blue for the 4 to 5, which references that in the rule book. Okay, so all you need to do is go, oh, and there's that right at the top of the page in the rules. This is 4 or 5 players. This is 1 to 3 players. So you kind of know what side of the board you're using. A couple of the differences are, if you could flip back to the 1 to 3. Oops. There we go. So if you'll notice in the record bin there, there's only one location to go, but you can buy from all 4 rows. Okay, so that limits you when you play a less player count. There is a less locations to go to. Also, there's a solo variant of the game, which we're proud of, and this also utilizes this side and references the A, B, C, and D, which is sit on the left side of the board there. Okay, go ahead.
What do you want to go?
Let's keep advancing, please. So we'll go, what's next? Okay, so let's go through the different locations of the board. So here's the sale bin, and these are the actions that you take at the sale bin. So if you've been following along and you understand the play of the game, you take your worker meeple, you only have one, that represents you, and you place it on the location there. So you're going to put it over the orange area where it has the little black meeple. And then you take that action. Okay, one of the cool mechanics in this game is the bump. So if somebody comes behind you, they bump you up 1, and you get a free action that you didn't have to utilize a turn for. And they're little like free actions you get when you get bumped. So every location will show that. Here you can choose a album from the sale bin in the main action, right? And then if you do get bumped, you can take what we call spoils. So anytime somebody goes behind you and they buy an album, you get to take one of their magazine cards that they used, and you pick it. So if they use 2 cards, you get to take one of the 2, and then you put that into your hand. So even when it's not your turn, you're getting something, which is really super awesome. So that's the sale bin. The little arrows with the line through it mean that you cannot stay there for more than 1 turn. No recycling there, like you can at other locations. So you can go ahead.
Overlay?
Yeah. So as you play the different variants of the game, we wanted to incorporate that into the board, right? So we didn't want to make a whole nother location that you got to go to, which then starts, the game starts to get not as tight because there's not as many locations. So what we designed is to have an overlay. So this shows the overlay for the clearance bin. So down in the bottom now is your main action when you're playing with the clearance bin. At the sale bin, then you make a choice. I go to the sale bin and I can either choose an album from the sale bin or I can choose an album from the clearance bin. Okay, and that's from first action. The bump action is still the same. You still take spoils from somebody that comes behind you to take that action. Okay? So here's the front counter. So the front counter is going to cover a lot of different things, but the front counter, you can, as a main action, you can take a layaway. You can take a card and place it on layaway, or you can recycle your endgame cards, endgame scoring cards, which are called loyalty. So the stack will be placed on the board over the loyalty card art that you see there. So when you go to that location, you have that. In the different versions of the game, the front counter changes. If you want to show the overlay. So it's the art matches, so it's kind of hard to see that now there's an overlay there. But if you see there's a little British flag, can you flip back? So that's without, and that's with. So the overlay is a punch out, and it lays down over it. And this is the British invasion overlay. I didn't show it in a picture, but there's an 80s overlay there as well. And instead of the British, well, I guess I can show it here if we want to switch out the camera. Can you do that quickly, or is that a big pain?
Yep.
Okay. So here's what I mean by that is there's a British flag here. So that means this is for the British invasion. So you can take the layaway, you can recycle your loyalty cards, or you go to the listening booth in that game. So I'll get into that in just a little bit when we talk about the different versions. But I just wanted to show this overlay. And then this shows 80s. So you can do the layaway, you can cycle your loyalty, or when you do the trade up, because the 80s has the trade-in counter. So that is what those are. So see if we can flip back to the board. All right. So this shows the overlay and how that sits on. And you would just flip that overlay like I showed if you wanted to do the 80s. So let's move on. So here's the mag rack location. Here is where you pick up more mag rack cards. You start the game with a certain amount based on the order of players. So the first person that plays first gets less magazine rack cards, and the person that plays last in a round gets more. And then that's how it's set, and you play that way for the rest of the game. The order doesn't change, but everybody gets equal turns. But going first is an advantage, so you have less cards. When you go to the magazine rack, you can pick up 2 cards. You can draft. It's a drafted row, so you can pick up one that's showing, or you can draw off the top. Or you can take a wild card that is showing, and then you just get 1 card. And that's the main action. The bump action lets you recycle your loyalty as a bump, or draw up 1 card. Then there's an overlay for this. When you play Masters of Metal, you collect memorabilia. We will go into that here in a little bit. But as you can see, you have the draw 2, draw wild, pick up a memorabilia. So we'll go over what memorabilia is. So each game, like I said, plays different. So you have the overlay. On the back side of that is so here's the Masters of Metal overlay. And these are all punch outs. So they're not cards. They're good cardboard. That's the Masters of Metal. And when you flip it over, you have the British invasion. And I'll show this, but you can do memorabilia for British and for the Masters of Metal. They're interchangeable, which was really a cool thing. I don't know that Eric knew that going in, but as we got through the design of the game, it works for both. So we gave you options as players. So that is the overlay. Is this record bin?
No, this is memorabilia.
Okay, so the memorabilia, on the main board, you'll have that concert ticket. And I designed that in for the memorabilia. And you can see the memorabilia sitting on the board as it will look as when you play. And there's a Masters of Metal side to the memorabilia, and there's a British invasion. So you can see that change there. So when you go to the mag rack, you can choose to take a memorabilia, and there's different kinds. So there's concert tickets, there's dog tags, there's a belt buckle, a poster, a keychain, and a t-shirt. And then I won't go into how they function. You can read the rules about that, but they boost your collections is the idea. But that is how that works. And then the record bin. So the record bin is where you buy your albums. There's 4 rows in a 1 to 3 player game. There's just one location in a 4 to 5 player game. The record bin is split into 2 locations. So there is no overlay for that. Those always stay the same. So that's the game board. Double-sided, and it has everything. So there's a lot there just in the board as well. And they use the same board for each version of the game. So let's get a little bit more into what each thing is. And we'll go with the Masters of Metal first, if you want to go to the product cam. So the Masters of Metal comes in its own tuck box. And there's the back of it. So you could choose to leave it in the tuck box or not. These are still in the shrink. I haven't taken them out, but there's the back side of it and the front side of the card for Masters of Metal. It all says Masters of Metal, and then for each album or group rather, it shows like aluminum, and then it has the icon. In this case, we chose to use the periodic table. Thought that'd be cute. So we put that there, and then of course the decade, and all the ones are different, but this gives you the flavor, right? So it's the same setup as the base, so you're not learning anything new if that's the base game art, right? So it shows jazz and this. So we kind of played on that same look. We just changed the artwork and the flavor so that you're playing a heavy metal game. It looks heavy metal. That's the idea there. And then all the heavy metal art, which is super cool. But you can still play the publisher expansion with this, and you can still do all those things. So it's all interchangeable. So each time you play the game, you can decide, okay, we want to play this version, and we want to play the publisher, or we don't, and those kinds of things. So that's the Masters of Metal, which showcases 6 different groups. Searching for the word. Sorry about that. So, and it showcased on there. So you have aluminum, you have electric, you have blacksmith, you have Judean ingot, you have iron forge, and piston head. Now those are all plays on real heavy metal bands, and then the artwork matches those. I did the logos in their likeness. And then there's all the albums and everything in there. And that's what the expansion. So the Masters of Metal was a stretch goal, so everybody's going to get that backed. But it comes as its own thing, because the people that didn't get that, or that didn't jump on board the Kickstarter and buy it retail, they'll have to buy the Masters of Metal separate. They won't get it for free like you folks. So kudos to you for getting in. $20 bonus for free, which everybody likes free stuff. So that is the Masters of Metal. So how does a Masters of Metal play different? And I'll just kind of cover that real quick. Masters of Metal, you just collect the same group. So in the base game, you're collecting genres. You can do a pure genre of music, like if you wanted to do jazz and you get the different things, or you can do a mixed, which is going to have all the different genres in one collection. In Masters of Metal, you're just collecting one band, but that's how the memorabilia fits in, because the memorabilia boosts your collection by having the different memorabilia in your collection. So it's kind of cool that way. So it plays very different than the base game. So the next expansion I'll cover is the British Invasion. So here's the British Invasion tuck box. It has that art that's different. And then the back of that as well. So each one has their own flavor and their own difference. Crack this open. So inside the deck box, you're going to get the 2 decks of cards. You're going to get the Mag-Rack cards, which has of course, the British look, and that's the back of the Mag-Rack card. So it looks like a what did we do? We did Rock and Roll magazine out of Britain. And then this is the art for the card. This also spoofs on 6 different bands. But it plays different from Masters of Metal, even though it focuses just on the 6 bands. So in this game, we introduce 45s. So I have this in the shrink, but I'm going to open it so I can share this with you. Nothing like cracking the shrink wrap. So this is what a 45 looks like. Okay, so it's a little bit different from a regular album card. So you're going to collect the 45, and then you're going to go to the listing booth, which is at the front counter. Okay, so that's right here. And this shows it's compatible with the British Invasion expansion. So you go to the listing booth, and you can take your 45s, and you can take from 1 to 3 45s, and you can listen to them. So you're going to flip them side. So if you see here, your 70s and is locked, and your other icon here is locked. But when you go to the listening booth, you unlock those. So now these become currency you can spend to further collect more albums. So in the British Invasion, you're collecting 45s as well as regular albums. And that is how that works. That's the difference. And so it has a whole different flavor to it. But it's familiar because you collect the albums the same way out of the record bin. And that's what that adds. But really proud of the design and the play of the British Invasion. I think it's Eric's favorite graphic design of all the expansions and the base game. I think he mentioned that. He really liked how this one looked. But it is very cool. And then we spoof on some different bands like Pink Floyd and The Who and the Beatles and some of those really influential British bands. And then, of course, we spoof them. Instead of Pink Floyd, you get Pink Fluid. And then it has the icon up at the top there. So that is the British Invasion and how that plays. Let me move this over. Next is the totally awesome 80s. So this also plays different from the other expansions. So just let me reiterate that. You get the base game, which is one version of the game, and then you can stack Publisher on top of that to get a different experience. You can incorporate the top shelf, which further gives you a separate experience, and the clearance bin, okay, either or. And that's the base game. You can then go and say, we want to play Masters of Metal, which then has memorabilia, and you collect different. You can include the top shelf into that if you want. You can include the clearance bin into that if you want, and the publisher into that if you want. So those are all different things that you can do with each expansion. Same for the British Invasion and the 80s. So here's the 80s look. Here's the back of the mag card. So it has that nice 80s. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in each of the backs of these. I'll reference the base game real quick here. But there's some Easter eggs in here and all this stuff. So, for instance, we have, let me show this real quick. But we have some different stuff there. So, if you'll notice, the picture is actually a backer. This picture here is actually a backer picture. And then I reference some different people all throughout the backs of these cards. So for the 80s, let's see, we reference some different backers on it, and you may see your name down here or may not. So be sure when you get your copy to look for those Easter eggs in there, because they're kind of spread all throughout the game. But that's the back of that. And then, of course, the 80s album art is a little different flavor. We have the neon line to give it that 80s flair with the, like I said, in the pink that comes in there. This is called Spin It magazine. and some things like that. So the difference, and let me crack this open for you. The difference in this version, so in the 80s, like I said, each expansion has a different, get this plastic off, plays different. So in this version of the game, you'll notice we don't have decades, but we have what we call sectors, right? So this has 6 different genres of music, and then we have sectors. In the 80s version, you have the trade-in counter. So at the front counter, instead of what normally is there, we've added, so you're going to pay the difference in upgrading, right? So you start the game with some albums that are, this is, it's one sector, which means it's a poor quality album. And the rules explain all that. But you want to upgrade your albums. Let me see if I can show this. So there's, it has 2 sectors there, if you can see. Can't separate the cards. There we go. This has 3 sectors. And then there's the final quality that shows 4 sectors. Okay, so you're going to start the game with these types of cards, and you can buy any of these albums out of the grid. But you're going to be able to buy this album for cheaper out of the grid because it's going to cost you 1 sector, and it's going to cost the remastered icon, right, and the genre. If you want to buy this album out of the grid, you got to pay 2 sectors, 3 sectors, and then of course this is a hi-fi remastered 4-sector, which is top of the line quality album, right? So you can trade up to get a better album. That's the hook in the 80s version. So you have the trade-in counter. So that is how that works. You want to pay. So if you wanted to trade from a level 1, you would pay the difference. So in this case, it would be the hi-fi and 3 sectors you would need to add when you went to the trade-in counter. You would pay the difference in mag cards. And that's how the 80s works. So plus, all the album art is different in every single expansion. So that was a lot of cards. There's 80 albums in each expansion. So do the math, times 4. So it was a lot to do. So that was some of the time getting all these things together for you as backers. So that is the awesome 80s. Let me just move all this stuff. So that's each of the expansions, and I'm sorry if it's a little long, but I want you to understand the size of this game is huge. So you're not getting one game. Even if you just back the base, or at the $49 level, you get Masters of Metal, which is free. It was a stretch goal, right? So you're going to get to play 2 versions. And if you went all in and did the British and you did the 80s, you have 4 games in one box. And each game can be changed up with the clearance bin, the top shelf, and the publisher expansion. It's all compatible. So there is a huge amount of game in that box. That seems to be something that we do at Talent Strikes, because King's Champion had that, and this has that, and Winterborn is going to have that. So very cool as a backer. I'm excited for you to be able to provide that. So let's quickly go through some of the components real quick, and then we'll wrap this thing up. I don't want to drone on too long, but I wanted you to get a good look at what you're getting. It's pretty awesome. So another stretch goal was to turn the rewards, instead of just little crummy cards, into cool records, right? What would be cooler than having a record token? So I'll go through the different tokens real quick. So when you retire your collection, you get to take a collection token, a collection reward. So it has a front and a back. And this is for pure. This is the base game. Okay. So let me do this first. So that's pure. Let me get into the plastic here. And you have mixed. Is that showing okay? And then you have double mixed. Probably should have had these all out, and there's the double mix. So these are the different kinds of collections. And how do these come into play is when you retire, you can pick, and it's based on what you retire. And very briefly, I'll just show this. So here's a section of the game, the board itself. And then you stack those on. So here's the 5, double mixed 5. You're going to stack those there. And then they all stack up right here for when you play. And then it's first come, first serve. You drill down into them. First person getting more points than the last person as it goes down. They're worth less. So retire early, get more points. That's the idea there. But the board has this so you can put your tokens down. Okay, so the base game does that. You can also see where we have this artwork here. So you can, of course, put down your Masters of Metal, which has a different look and feel, right? And the British Invasion, which is brown on the outside, and that has a different look and feel. So all the components that you need to play each of these expansions is already in the base game box, right? So all you have to do is purchase the decks that go with it. So we also wanted to provide that as well. So that is how that works. So those are the reward tokens. There is the separators, and that's how you take the time on the game, right? It's played over a number of rounds, and there is no set number of rounds. It's just based on the salesperson action. So let's go to the... So in the game, you get these separators. They are not cards. They are quality because they're part of the punch-outs. So you're going to have 3 of these, and this is based on, in the rules it talks about how many to put in and those kinds of things. But there's one at the end that is closing time. So these say salesperson action, and there's a specific action that you take when those come up in the crate. But closing time, so this is when all the albums are out of the crate, the store closes. And this shows closing time and what you do. So those are the separators that go in the crate. Even though my crate is, this crate is not wonderful, but I'll show. So they just fit into the crate. And that's, you flip through them until you get to closing time. So that's what those are. You then have the publisher. The other part of the publisher expansion is the publisher powers. I won't go into that too much. Just that you have frequent shopper and extreme shopper, and that was shown on the player mat. So those come with the publisher expansion as well. Let's see. Let's show, we did say we'd show the Disco Meeple, so let's show that real quick because I got these right here. So that's what the Disco Meeple looks like. They're super cool. So if you want to play Meeples, you can play Meeples. One of the other cool goals that we had was guitars. These came out absolutely fantastic. So we'll show these now. These are the different guitars. So we have 5 of them for a 5-player game. And you just pick a guitar instead of a meeple, and you can play that guitar. We thought about doing colors, we thought about doing some different stuff, but you know, you may want to play a different guitar each time you play. So we didn't want to make them colors. We just kind of wanted to leave that up to the backers how they choose. You may choose to paint them. I had a really awesome guy paint my set, and it was a lot of fun to play with painted. So, but they're all different, and they turned out gorgeous. So that was really a cool thing to have for you guys, which makes this just another way to bling out the game and make it fun to play. Let me move those off to the side. So the first player token is the insert for a 45. That was Eric's suggestion. Really punched out, really cool. It's a neat thing to have. So that's the first player marker. Another thing for a solo game is the target. You put that on a target album based on the information that's provided to you on cards, and then that's the album that gets taken. And then I'll show the memorabilia up close real quickly. So these are the memorabilia tokens. They got Masters of Metal on one side and British Invasion on the other. So you can play with both expansions that way. So that kind of gives you just a rundown of the different stuff in the box and the game and what it is. I was excited to do that just to kind of show everything that's in there and everything that's available to you. Please, if you have questions in the comments, please comment and ask. I'd love to provide that information for you. If you have a question, may take me a minute to get back to all of them, but I'll certainly do my best. I think we do a pretty good job of staying on top of that, answering your questions. So please ask if you have any questions or anything like that. I think we've covered everything that's here. Like I said, they should turn on production on Monday. That's what they conveyed to us, and they'll start mass producing. Take about 4 weeks or so, and then they can package it all up and ship it off to the dock, and we'll get it on a boat for you guys. We're breaking up to 2, so we have one going to the European area, and we have one coming to the Americas, and we've gone with Quartermaster Logistics for our fulfillment. I've done Ship Naked in the past, but this time around Quartermaster really took care of us, and we're going with them. So please look for those emails to probably start hitting you. I hope, of course, we'll do other updates to show that, but I'm hoping sometime end of February you'll get those, and then that's the new timeline. So we wanted to, of course, hit November. We didn't hit November with just the things that happen as it is. I do apologize for that. Some of that was art related, some of that was not in my hands. That's the manufacturer and those things. But as a whole, I have games that I back that are a year overdue now, so they're still coming. So I'm trying not to be that guy for you. I want to get this to you as soon as possible. A couple other things in the links below. I will link the rule book. I will also link most anticipated game for next year. I would love if you guys would go and click that and thumb that up for us. I'm very excited to get this game out there. I think this game is going to hit, and you folks that got in early, it's going to be awesome, because if I do a reprint, I don't think I can offer it for the same price. I really don't, based on what's in here. That have to be a little bit more. So thank you for being early adapters and backing this game. On behalf of Eric, I'd like to thank you as well. He was over the moon. It's always something as a designer when you see your game come to life and you get to see the final products. You just can't explain what that is. It's an amazing feeling, and that this many people believed in what Talon Strikes is doing and this game. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you for being there for us as a company, and I hope you'll enjoy what you see, and you'll continue to support us in the future on our next games. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.